It says preparing. It should show up here in just a second. All right. We're live with the captive audience. I'm Kevin Hoare, the communications director for the Oregon Republican Party. With me is my co-host, David Darnell, chair of the 5th Congressional District. Welcome, David. I think you're muted there.
You're right. I was muted.
And we need to hear you. We need to hear your voice. And today we're going to have a special guest who I'll introduce in just a moment. You can actually see him on your screen. But before I do that, we just wanted to take a moment to remember the life of U.S. Representative Bob Smith, who represented Oregon's Congressional District from 1983 through the mid-90s. He was the immediate predecessor to Congressman Greg Walden, who's retiring this year. Congressman Bob Smith was 89 years old, and he served with distinction and was a rancher, legislator, had served in various capacities in the state, and was a fierce advocate for Eastern Oregon, for ranching, rural Oregon. And I think we wanted to just make sure that we recognized not only that he passed, but that that his service was something that Republicans not only acknowledge but appreciate, and that our prayers and our thoughts are with his family and friends right now who are mourning his passing. David, did you want to kind of add a comment or two there?
Well, he was a fierce advocate for what is most of Oregon, and that's rural Oregon. Most of Oregon doesn't exist inside of a city, and so we need good legislators like that. And I think our special guest today is going to be another one of those.
Yep. And so without further ado, let me introduce to you somebody who we are really looking forward to serving with honor and distinction as the next congressman from the 4th Congressional District, the Republican Party nominee, who is running against I believe it's 17-term Congressman Peter DeFazio, Alek Skarlatos. Alek is former Oregon National Guardsman. He attended air assault school, sniper school, and achieved the rank of specialist. He completed a 9-month deployment in Afghanistan with the U.S. Army National Guard, 186th Infantry Regiment, and the 41st Infantry Brigade Combat Team in 2015. Alek, along with 4 others, stopped an armed terrorist attack on a Paris-bound plane traveling from Amsterdam to Paris in August of 2015. His heroism earned him several awards and medals around the world, including the United States Soldier's Medal, in addition to receive the Chevalier of the Legion of Honor and the Medal of the City of Arras in France. My French is not too bad, but I might have butchered that last one. After serving with the National Guardsmen for 5 years, Alek left military service in November 2017. After completing his service, he voiced his inspiring experience by authoring the 1517 to Paris, a true story of a terrorist, a train, and 3 American heroes, describing the events that led up to the attack on the train ride to Paris from Amsterdam. He had the privilege of working with legendary director Clint Eastwood, that is awesome, on the film 1517 to Paris that portrayed the harrowing attack in which Alek starred as himself. He played himself in this, in effect, a biopic of the events that took place. He went on tour around the country, public speaking engagements, encouraging others to take control of their lives and the importance of the duty to their community. His experience stretches beyond the military with a strong belief in service to his community, and he stays active by advocating for responsible forest management in Southern Oregon. What could possibly be more appropriate to talk about right now? He lives in Roseburg, where he spends his free time hiking and exploring all that Oregon has to offer. Alek, welcome to the captive audience, and thank you for joining us here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So it's very interesting. Of course, by the way, you were on Dancing with the Stars. I know that's not in the, but I was a fan, and a lot of us really enjoyed seeing you on that too. So it definitely goes beyond just service to the community. But I think that maybe you could tell us a little bit about your race and what some of the key things are that you're talking about in your race today with somebody who's been in office for almost 35 years. That's quite a change that we're trying to make in the 4th District in Oregon.
Yeah, absolutely. So the main reason why I got involved in politics to begin with is really the lack of forest management going on in Oregon's 4th Congressional District in particular, and how the ONC laws really kind of tie our hands to where we're not allowed to harvest or salvage log or even manage the forest in a way that prevent forest fires. And I think we're now seeing the consequences of that now with one of the worst fire seasons in about 100 years. Also, the 4th District of Oregon is the poorest congressional district in the state. So really it's a lot of those downstream consequences from getting rid of the forest industry and timber industry that has really led to high unemployment, high drug use, high child abuse that we see in Oregon's 4th District, and as well as all the tertiary industries that once supported the timber industry as well. And of course, with county governments receiving a large portion of their tax dollars from the timber industry, even the counties are hurting. So it really affects us on almost every level. And that's one of my main motivations for running. Also, due to what I survived in the middle of a gun-free continent, I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment and people's right to defend themselves.
Yeah, which is actually kind of an issue right now, because one of the news stories that we've been reading about is how there's been a spike in crime in places that people have had to evacuate. And there's folks that are concerned about what's happening to their property, their belongings, and they have to look out for themselves sometimes when this is happening as well. But tell us a little bit about what you have experienced in just the recent weeks, and what, how you kind of see your impact could change what happens in the future, since it's obviously been decades that Peter DeFazio has had to try and do something about this.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So first, I think that if we actually get back out and start managing the forest properly, it'll help prevent future forest fires, as well as boost Oregon's 4th District's economy that desperately needs it. Not to mention, I mean, one of the things that we would like to do if elected is really help out Republican politics throughout Oregon and help recruit and organize with younger Republicans and actually start moving the needle in the other direction, not only on the state level, but other federal races as well. And so it's tough to run in Oregon as a Republican, trust me, I know, but we're definitely going to try to change that for future candidates and younger candidates coming up.
David, I'm going to pitch over to you, because I'm sure that you got some things that you'd like to ask about here.
Well, I'm just about ready to move out of CD5 and re-register in CD4 so I can vote for Alek, because I like what he's saying. My house is primarily in CD5, but I have another house and a number of business locations in CD4. And I just happen to live within a kind of a trio of the poorest zip codes in the state of Oregon. So I know what Alek's talking about. Pretty much that has just stemmed from the fact that we no longer harvest lumber. The last numbers I heard is I think we gross something like 10 billion board feet in our forest, and we harvest about 1 billion, which is roughly akin to, I think, planting 10 acres corn, harvesting 1 acre of it and letting the rest just rot or dry out and burn. And I think, Alex hit on another thing, is that over 50% of our land in the state of Oregon, it's a lot higher down here in CD4, is owned by the federal government. And so it doesn't produce any income for us as far as taxes without logging. And I think Alex is on the right track there. I mean, I'd like to see him get in there and at least manage our forests so that we don't have these catastrophic wildfires. It's horrible.
That's a great point, actually. And one thing I'd like to touch on real quick is that actually we salvage log less than 1% of all burned timber on federal lands. So all these trees that are burned still have 90 to 95% of their value. And instead of logging them and creating jobs and bringing money into county government, we just let them rot, which of course is dumping carbon into the atmosphere and of course increasing the risk of future fires.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, all of the county services, our schools, police, fire department, all run on a very, very small amount of taxable land. I think in Josephine County, where I'm at actually currently, it's less than 50% of the land, or it's way less than 50% of the land is actually taxable. So, yeah, I'd like to see something. I mean, do you think we can move the needle in DC? After all these catastrophic wildfires and get something done in our forests, Alek?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it. So take some homework figuring out what's actually the most achievable. But honestly, I really think that the most common sense compromise that ironically Peter DeFazio voted against was increasing the rate of salvage logging. Just from salvage logging burned timber, we should be able to get over the 500 million board foot minimum set in the ONC agreement. That would, of course, then help fund county services and bring in jobs to the economy.
Right. And the ONC lands were specifically set aside to keep counties and towns going, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Absolutely. And like I said, the minimum is 500 million board feet that we're supposed to harvest off of these ONC lands, up to 1.2 billion. And right now we're doing about 270 million. We're doing almost half of the mandatory minimum.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, and so if we don't salvage the logs in our burn scars, it just sits there and creates fuel for another fire.
Yep, it's
no sense whatsoever.
Even from an environmentalist point of view, like I said, I mean, younger trees prevent forest fires. They sequester more carbon than older trees, and salvage logging again also sequesters carbon. And it makes no sense, even from an environmental perspective, to leave all that lumber laying out in the forest to rot and burn up next year.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, plus the forest management practices, I think, include things like trying to remove some of the underbrush and the things that serve as kindling, control burns, just a whole menu of things that it seems like they don't really do. So then one of these things comes through with the high winds, embers blowing through the air, and boom, all of this stuff is it's burning, which you mentioned, of course, the impact on carbon emission. This is a massive cost to the people in these towns, some of which these towns don't even exist anymore. What are you seeing the impact on people? And of course, what is the opposite scenario? What could we look forward to as the kind of economy if we actually did start to go and harvest this wood, including the stuff that's been burned?
Well, I mean, obviously it would be a tremendous boost to, of course, not only the timber industry and the tertiary industries that support it, but also county government. And I mean, things used to be really good here back in the 70s and 80s when we were actually harvesting, and we were still not even near the rate of sustainability on federal lands. So to me, it would seem reasonable that we should at least get back to that number and get back in the woods. And I mean, you didn't see very many forest fires in the 70s and 80s. And it's not, I mean, I really don't believe that it's climate change, because if it was, then I don't know. I don't think it's any coincidence that it takes about 35 years for Douglas fir to mature. And it's about 30 to 35 years ago that we really started tapering off logging. Now you have all these huge trees that are reaching maturity that were intended to be harvested, and instead they're growing incredibly close together in an unmanaged forest, and it's just a firebomb waiting to happen.
That's interesting. You said sustainability too, which is part of it. I mean, trees are like a renewable resource. So like if you harvest them, you can grow more. And sometimes people don't seem to act like the forests are a renewable resource when in fact they're one of the most magnificent ones we've got.
Well, and like you mentioned before as well, I mean, the ONC forests were meant to be a working forest. They were not meant to be left alone. They were meant to provide a stable economy and income to county governments. And instead, they're really a liability now.
And DeFazio, being in such a forest rich district, he pretty much votes against managing the forest, doesn't he? I mean, doesn't he vote against taking anything out?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, he voted even against salvage logging 3 weeks ago. And you would think in a district that's that reliant on timber, that you wouldn't have a congressman that does things like sponsor the Green New Deal. And I think he's just lost touch, and it's unfortunate, but we need someone who can actually try to reach compromise and at least get something done to get us above 500 million board feet set in the ONC laws.
It almost feels like the citizens of the 4th district just don't even have a voice at the federal level for these crucial issues. It's somebody who is his support coming from somewhere else in the country or the state, because he's missing the boat with his own people.
Well, I think most of his support probably comes from Eugene and Corvallis, but we're competing there as well. I mean, people don't want to see their retirement accounts taxed, and that's something that DeFazio is pushing for as well. And he's just taken a lot of bad votes. I mean, the Green New Deal would add something like $65,000 in taxes to really every household, and most people don't agree with that, whether you live in Eugene, Corvallis, Roseburg, Coos Bay. I mean, he's just a very far left Democrat congressman, and he votes like he's from Seattle or San Francisco, even though he's from rural Oregon in a district larger than Connecticut that was the timber capital of the world.
That's interesting. Wow. Because of course you said it's it's the poorest district in the state, and yet he doesn't seem to know or care. That is a tough pill to swallow, but there's a lot of folks that have natural resource based jobs in the district. What if anything can we say Peter DeFazio has done that anybody would say, well, wait a second, that was probably something that the people of the district would like? I can't point to anything, and I'm not sure that you would even need to, but it's confusing because, as you said, he's out of touch. So what's his explanation?
I don't really know. We don't talk on a daily basis. You'd have to ask him.
Yeah, so there's a lot of excitement for your campaign, Alek. Are you? I know that you've received quite a bit of support from people in your district, and really people all over the state of Oregon. Are you finding that to be true? Pretty much every place you go out there.
Oh yeah, people are really excited about this campaign. I mean, this is the first time in 33 years, or really since 1975 even, that a Republican has had a chance to flip Oregon's 4th. We're getting a tremendous amount of help from small dollar donors across the district, across the state, and even across the country. And I think it's rare that a Republican in Oregon can be that hopeful, but we stand a very good chance of upsetting DeFazio in this race. And I mean, I really am glad to have the support of everybody watching right now and today. So really thank you all for having me.
Yeah, I need to put your donation link out here in the comments. How can people donate to contribute to your campaign?
Alek4Oregon.com, or you can send us a envelope or a check to PO Box 2167, Roseburg, Oregon 97470. And I've really got a great team, and we're doing everything we can. We're working 7 days a week, probably 12 hours a day now that we're in campaign season. Things are really heating up, and it's getting interesting.
It is, yeah. And election day typically in Oregon comes early because the ballots drop here in about a little over 3 weeks, and a lot of people start voting then. So yeah, it gets really busy, really busy. All right, I got that.
So it's Alek4Oregon.com. Everybody needs to make sure that they mark it down. So there was another issue that you mentioned earlier that I thought you might want to touch upon. You were talking about the importance of the Second Amendment, and of course, you gave the example of a gun-free continent, and yet, it became critical that you knew what to do and how to deal with circumstance like that. Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of that issue for you in the campaign?
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously, surviving a terrorist attack in the middle of a gun-free continent is a pretty clear illustration of why gun-free zones don't work. I mean, again, a gun-free continent, this guy got a fully automatic AK-47 and a handgun. And the Democrats right now are not condemning the violence and the riots. They're in favor of defunding the police department. And at the same time, they want to take away your guns. So who exactly is responsibility is your safety, and who is going to protect you if they want to take away guns, law enforcement, and encourage these riots? To me, it makes no sense. And I think that most people are going to see that and hopefully vote Republican, if no other reason than the Democrats are going down a scary road. And most people do not agree with their stance on the Second Amendment and a lot of other things, and really just law and order and personal safety.
That's a great point. Like they don't, the Democrats, until they saw some polling recently, didn't really have anything to say to condemn what I like to call the angry Biden voters rioting in Portland. I mean, one of the problems is they don't want you to be able to defend yourself, and they don't want the police to be able to protect you. And yet at the same time, they want to defund the police instead of give them more training for all the things they say they want to solve. What do you think the way forward is here? And what is some of them, because you've spoken out on this, what are some of your messages to people about this defunding of police that Democrats say they want to do everywhere?
Well, it's not going to work, frankly. I mean, Oregon is already the least police state in the country. We need more police and more training for police. If you cut the department's budget, the first thing they're going to cut is training, because they need more officers on the street. And if you cut a department's training, the first thing that's going to happen is more instances like what happened to George Floyd, not less. If you want fewer things like that to happen, you need to have more training, and maybe, for instance, have better training when it comes to treating people with mental illness, instead of having, mental health professionals back up the officers. Just train the officers as mental health professionals. That way they're equipped to deal with even more situations, because a mental health professional is not going to respond to something where someone is armed with a knife or a gun. That's going to be a law enforcement officer. And so it's going to be on them to de-escalate and try to solve that situation peacefully. And of course, defunding the police is going to make their job tougher and harder, not easier and better.
That's a great point. We just had that incident that occurred in Portland, where there was a gentleman who went out, I think, to check if he had left something in his car. And before he got back into his apartment, his 10-year-old son was being attacked by a guy who is like high on some substance, was holding a knife at his throat. You guys talked about that last night, David. And and this is an example. They didn't respond for what, an hour and a half to that. And it's because they didn't have enough officers on duty. And of course, citizens were stuck trying to figure out how to corral this guy. I mean, that could be everyone's story everywhere if the Democrat policies were to be followed.
Well, I mean, like I said, we have a very scary future ahead of us, and the choices between the two parties couldn't be more clear. I remember watching the RNC, and they had David Dorn's wife on, and seeing how the RNC was conducted versus the Democratic National Convention, and they had people like Billie Eilish and Cardi B on, and the contrast could never be more clear. And I hope that a lot of the moderate, non-affiliated voters wake up and realize that this country could take a very wrong turn very soon, November 3rd.
Are you finding that, Alek, are you finding that people out there, when you're out and about meeting folks, I mean, are they turning off to that whole Democrat Hollywood thing and just really looking for a real person like yourself?
I'm honestly not sure if it has to do with my personality or anything like that. I think it really just has to do with the extreme positions the Democrats have taken lately. Most people realize that's not the way they want the country to go. They don't want, I mean, hell, I went to the Chaz in Seattle, and most people do not want the United States to be one big Chaz. I mean, people see people are smart enough to see where the Democrats want to take this country and what the Democrats are okay with. And it's really scaring them. And honestly, just for the health of the country, I hope the Democrats lose big enough this election to maybe wake up people in the Democrat Party that, hey, maybe we need some more moderate candidates for a change, and we don't need to go and follow the left leading edge of their party.
Right. Yeah, good point.
And it's interesting that you mentioned too that they seem to be heading in the exact opposite direction of solving these problems, which, you know, makes the contrast a strong contrast. In the 4th district, what are you? Have you had contact with people from, say, law enforcement who have shared with you some of their concerns? And of course, what are citizens telling you about their concerns with things like defunding? What they're hearing about the riots, and of course, there have been some incidents, like in Eugene, a riot I think that occurred a number of weeks ago. What are you hearing from them on this?
Well, a lot of Democrats are really just telling us that the party has left them. I mean, we even have a Democrat working on my campaign, and her job is specifically to talk to other Democrats and tell them, you know, the party has gone incredibly far left. I mean, I want to try to reach compromise and win the middle on a lot of these issues. And honestly, I have a lot of friends that are in law enforcement, and seeing how they've basically been turned into human punching bags in Portland is very disconcerting. And most people know at least one person in law enforcement, and it's a scary time to be a police officer in this country, especially in Oregon. And we do not need to keep going down this road. I mean, we need to fight back and actually support our police officers who, again, 99% of them are good people who just want to go home at the end of the night. We need to absolutely have reforms on the bad apples and the 1% of officers that doesn't do the right thing. But I mean, most officers are not that, and we need to stand behind them. And this movement of defund the police and these riots, I mean, no one really believes in it other than, again, people on the very far left. And hopefully this election is a referendum on that.
That sounds like that's a real opportunity too for you, because of course Peter DeFazio just gives the power to someone like Nancy Pelosi, who has done nothing about this. I mean, that's one of the biggest changes, is electing you to the 4th district is a step in the direction of perhaps reversing that extreme leftward tilt that's happened in the House of Representatives, where, you know, you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and people like that talking about Green New Deals. They want to defund police. There's a whole policy list, and it's like you could actually help shift this in a direction that people almost can't imagine could happen this quickly.
And it's unfortunate because Peter DeFazio's slogan used to be "as independent as Oregon." Actually, I think it still is his slogan. And he votes with AOC 96% of the time, and he votes with Nancy Pelosi 94% of the time. He's far from independent. And I think about, at least from the last FEC report, 67% of his donations come from PACs and corporations. He is the exact thing that he claims to not be. And we just don't need an extremist like that representing Oregon's 4th Congressional District.
Well, he would have to change his slogan to "as independent as AOC."
Or as independent as Nancy Pelosi lets him be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah, she tells him where to go and what to do.
Yeah. Hey, there's a lot of great comments, Alec. April Clemson says, "So much common sense." She's talking about you. You give me hope. Wish I could vote for you. And then Anna Lancaster, a little further down, says, "Well, we can't vote for Alec, but we can donate to his campaign and other competitive Oregon races." That's a like for me. Jody Weigel says, "Alec, you're standing up for what Oregon needs. Thank you. We need you in office." So there you have it.
No hardball questions?
Well, here's, you mean from Facebook? Yeah.
Let's find one.
Well, I have a kind of a question, but I think it's one that you, I'm sure I'm accustomed to, which is that obviously everything that's happened with the pandemic, I've seen you out there trying to help get, you know, PPP to people and be supportive and help the community. And I don't know if Peter DeFazio even really spends a lot of time in the community engaging with these, but there's a lot of businesses that are hurting right now. What are your thoughts about that? Because right now, Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to make a deal and help all of these businesses that and people who are unemployed that are struggling in a state that can't seem to get them their benefits efficiently. What are your thoughts on what the way forward on this? What would be a smarter way?
Well, we really need to get the state benefits issue figured out, and hopefully we can get Jeff Goodman elected as well, and Kim Thatcher to help sort that out. It's really tough. I mean, we've had the coronavirus and a lot of these small businesses getting hurt due to the coronavirus response. And then on top of that, in places like Eugene and Portland, some of these same businesses that have been struggling for months then get their windows smashed out and get looted. And then on top of everything else, we have the worst forest fire season in probably about 100 years. I mean, we're really struggling. I mean, Oregon's 4th Congressional District was already struggling before any of this happened. And now we have all this going on. And man, I really hope people can wake up and realize that we need help out here in Oregon. I mean, we've had Democrat leadership for how long? And look at where it's gotten us. I mean, people really we need an alternative. I mean, one party ruling a state or a country or a county for too long is not healthy, regardless of the party. There always needs to be a dissenting point of view. And we have a super minority in the Oregon State House, and we only have one congressman representing the entire congressional delegation from Oregon. And I mean, other than Bev Clarno, who's a nominee, we have no one on the statewide. So I really hope people look at Republicans as an alternative, and hopefully Republicans can reach a lot of those people in the middle by running on common sense issues and just getting the vast majority of people on our side. I mean, let's give Republicans a chance and see how better this state becomes for a healthy discourse between Republicans and Democrats. And I mean, even to the candidates themselves, I mean, we really need to be reaching those people in the middle and talking to those people in the middle and figuring out what's actually important to them, not the fringes of either party.
Well said.
Well said. Very, very well said. And I think we want to make sure one more time here before we kind of wrap up our show is how can people, what would be some of the ways that you would like people to help you, especially since they're listening all over the state right now, and what information do they need in order to do that?
Well, obviously donations are appreciated. You can go to alek4oregon.com for that. Also, if you reach out to us at our Facebook, Alek for Oregon or Alek Skarlatos for Congress, you can shoot us an email or a Facebook message if you'd like to volunteer. We're doing door knocking limited, but also a lot of phone calls. If you'd like to help out in any way, just please reach out, and our volunteer coordinator, Dom, will call you and get in touch and figure out what's best for you. But thank you.
In this virtual day and age, you can actually probably get help from almost anywhere in the state, can't you, for the phone calling?
Absolutely. We've even had people out of state making phone calls on our behalf. I mean, people are really excited about this race across the country. If we're going to flip and take back the House, this district is one that we have to win to do that. So we really have, I couldn't be more fortunate. We have such a great team and tons of support. I mean, if it's ever going to happen, it's going to happen now. So we're really excited, and I hope everybody else out there watching this is too.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here tonight. It's alek4oregon.com, right? I got that right? And, you know, we're praying for you. We're very hopeful for you. We want to encourage everyone listening and everyone who watches this on replay, because we get a lot of people watching this after the live show is over, to consider finding a way to help you. Donate, volunteer. And if you're in the district, I'm sure there's going to be things that people should watch for here as the campaign continues in the coming weeks. Are there any events that they should know about, or could they just get that at the website as well?
For events, actually, the best thing would be to follow the Facebook page, and usually we'll put up where we're going to be a day or two prior. And if you'd like to actually meet me or talk to me, figure out if you'd like to vote for me, please show up to any event, or again, shoot us a Facebook message or an email. I mean, hopefully we're going to get the message out as much as possible. I think we've bought every TV spot we can between now and the election. We literally cannot physically buy more TV than we already have. So we're really excited and firing on all cylinders. And Again, we just need more people talking about us to their neighbor, to their family members, and just get the word out in a person-to-person conversations and things like that.
Fantastic. Everybody needs to have their names right on their lips, knowing that they've got an opportunity to change what happens in the 4th District. David, did you have any last remarks? Or
Yes, my last remarks are, I'd just like to reassure everyone who's watching and everyone who will watch this that you can make a donation in less than 30 seconds, because I just did. AlekForOregon.com.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us here tonight. We just wanted to mention to folks before we wrap up that this Saturday, there's going to be a Reagan dinner event. It's taking place physically in Washington County, but everybody in the state, through the partnership of the Oregon Republican Party, can actually watch this event from the comfort of their home. It is this Saturday, the 26th. I think it starts around 6:30 p.m. And if you go to the Oregon Republican Party website or to the Washington County website, washco.gop/Reagan dinner, and you can sign up, and it's a big event. We're going to have the governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem, who was at the Republican National Convention, so we got to see her speak and talk about how she handled things in her state and kept her economy going and still fought off the pandemic. And then we're going to have Corey Lewandowski, advisor to the president. We're going to have Congressman Greg Walden, who we hope Alek will be become the second congressman, so that in a few years we'll be introducing Congressman Alek Skarlatos at a future Reagan Day dinner. And of course, we'll be having Chris Dudley, the candidate for governor in 2010, who came within just a hair of winning. And so that's only $25. We want to encourage everyone to join for that. And I think that that kind of wraps up our show for tonight. David, thank you for
thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Alek.
And Alek, best of luck with everything. And we're hoping and praying that you can actually take out 17-term incumbent Peter DeFazio and make the 4th District a fantastic place once again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And thanks everybody for watching. This is the Captive Audience, and we'll be back tomorrow night with another episode right here on the Oregon Republican Party Facebook page. Have a good night.